You're listening to I Hate Radio, where the hate is spelled with an 8. It's Rob Smittix here, and I got a very special guest on the line. I'm talking to Dax Callner, and he's from the band The Dayz. Dax, what's going on, man?
What's going on? How are things? That's the Days spelled with a Z.
It is Dayz.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, man. Just living the life over here, man.
Yeah.
um, Now you got some really good music out there. I just watched a really good music video I seen of you where you were jogging or actually running, I think, full speed.
Yes,
Um,
that's right.
so yeah, what's in the works with you?
Well, I have this band in New York City called the Days, eight-piece band, so it's a big group of people. And we are all really dedicated to this, to making interesting, cool music that we love to perform live, and we put on some awesome live shows. And we all are adults, and living in a music industry day where you can't make money off of music enough to support yourself, which is just the way things go unless you're a million album seller.
Oh yeah.
And so we all have day jobs, and some of us have families, and we're all living our lives. But this is more than a hobby; it's a passion, and we're fully ensconced in it. And it's an original band doing original music. And I think, like I said, it's our passion. We're doing it.
No, absolutely. Actually, that reminds me a lot of myself because I'm in a band as well. And yeah, same thing, adults, married, kids,
Yeah.
day jobs. We tend to book like northeastern tours on the weekends and work around
Well,
Cape Cod
exactly.
during the summer. So,
I know we're not gonna. I would love to jump in the van and tour the world, but first of all, actually, I really wouldn't love that. I think it sounds terrible. But there's a sexiness to that that I probably should have done, when I was 18,
hmm.
and did some of it. Like I was in a band in Boston. I went to school in Boston, and I was in a band there. We took a road trip at one point from Boston to Austin, Texas, to play South by Southwest.
Right.
And that was crazy. I mean, it was like I don't drink, but everyone else in the band drank, and they were just going nuts the whole time. I was
Sure.
the designated driver, and I always am. But that was, I've done some of that stuff, but I'll tell you, like, the sexiness of that has worn off. And so you're right. Like, I'm happy to go up and down the coast and play shows here on the East Coast when we can all make it work. But listen, if the right opportunity came up for, like, if South by Southwest called again, of course I would do everything I can to play it. But I may not do it in a rented van the next time if I can avoid it. If
Right.
you know what I'm
Right.
saying.
I do. I'm not sure I really like I mean, I know South by Southwest is, big right now. I'm not really sure I even like the setup of how it works, to be honest, because you
Well, I
bring
know that they're totally full of shit because what
right.
they do is they have a whole audition set up for bands, but the reality is it's become a showcase for major and maybe indie label talent to launch their new products.
Hmm.
And so it's all based now. It's a very industry insider event now, where once it was had a much cooler indie vibe to it, and it really was based on like someone at least evaluating the quality of the artists. I think that's over. It's all about buzz now.
Yeah.
And I used to live in Austin, Texas, and I would avoid it like the plague, man, when I was there because it was just full of people I didn't want to be around. I was like,
Yeah.
these are not, cool people. I forget this. So, I am kind of over it, but of course, as a music person, as a platform for exposure, I would probably, be a whore and take advantage of it and do it if we were asked.
You and I both. Absolutely. Now, 8 guys in the group, man. That's gotta be something. Like I mentioned.
7 guys and a woman.
Oh, my bad. That's right. That's right. Well, she must feel outnumbered.
Well, yes, she is way outnumbered, but we are all gentlemen and we're all not sexist, and so it's worked perfectly well.
No, that's excellent. No, I just think about like how getting band practices are hard enough. Like with me, like with four guys and seven guys and a lady, must be a little hard to get everybody together or fitting
It's
everybody
super
on one
hard.
of those little stages in a dive bar. So
Well, we've actually thankfully moved beyond the dive bars because it uh, I guess we've been doing it long enough and we have enough of an audience that we can justify a level up from that, which gives us access to slightly bigger stages and better sound systems. I those dive bars, man, it just doesn't work for us. We're way too many people.
hmm
If the sound people there, you have to. I mean, we have 8 instruments, literally. So it's like to balance that sound in a dive bar environment doesn't quite work. And so, yeah, I mean, even squeezing the 8 of us onto like a decent club stage is tricky. But we played the bitter end a couple weeks ago, for example,
hmm
and the bitter end is just one step up from a dive, but it's got that 40 years of history, so it's got some coolness to it. But their
Absolutely.
stage is awesome, and their sound is awesome. They have invested in that stuff, and so I like playing there because it's a good vibe, and it's a good, and we have room. Otherwise, I'm tripping over the drums and the backup
Right.
singer, and we're all over the place. Like, yeah, I need the space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now we played this place, Paulie's Hotel, which if you ever in upstate New York, it's definitely a classic place to play. But yeah, small stage, and my drummer's always complaining. He's like, "Man, I can barely fit the drums on the stage." And then it was like I think a week or so later, they had a who was it? It was a big ska band playing there, and they had like
Hmm.
12
Horns
guys.
and stuff. Yeah,
Like, how did
can't
they do it?
imagine.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you had an interesting childhood. It looks like son of Marty Callner, and
Yes,
he's
that's
very
true.
very well known. Well, I guess he's a producer, and you had a lot of stuff. But you tell us more about that because that seemed like pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, I would actually say he's more of a director, although he has done some producing. He has produced some stuff, but most of his career was in directing, and he directed over 200 music videos in the 80s and 90s.
Wow.
He was one of the first directors to do live event specials for HBO, so he did a lot of early comedy and music specials. I mean, basically, literally any artist or comedian from the 70s or 80s that you could name, I think he has worked with, especially heavier stuff. Like in the 80s, he got involved in, he did the famous videos with Aerosmith that starred Alicia Silverstone. Those are all his. I used to work on those with him when I was a kid. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and we used to bat around ideas for videos. And so I would be part of that process. I was like 19, but it was really fun.
Oh man, I couldn't
He
imagine. I
did,
mean, I would have been trying to
yeah,
hook up with
pretty cool.
Alicia Silverstone.
Well, it's funny you say that. That never happened, but it was I don't even want to get into details, but I remember one time. Actually, we'll tell you a story. He was at the time he was working on a film script, and he was having actresses come in and read for parts. And this actress came in called Mila Jovovich, who was a model at the
hmm
time, has since had some success in acting. And so I'm sitting downstairs in the building where his office was, and he's like, "Hey Dax, can you come up here and can you read some lines with us? You know, we're working on a scene." So I go up there, and Mila Jovovich is there, and we started to read the scene. And the scene, as it turns out, I'm reading the male part, and she's reading the female part. It turns out it's like a couple of kids who are getting ready to have sex. And so she's like looking at me with intense lust in her eyes. And if you've seen her eyes, she's got these blue, crazy eyes. And I was getting really nervous.
I
I was
bet.
like, whoa, because, and I'm thinking to myself, are we acting here or is there something happening? There was definitely nothing happening, but for a few minutes,
She was good
I
at it.
loved
She was really
Mila
good.
Jovovich. She was a little too good. I have to say, I was getting really like I was getting weird feelings over my body.
What an experience.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
now, you were also, you were in the Twisted Sister video.
I was. That is
And
true.
man, I mean, my dad's pretty cool, but he never put me into a music video or anything. I had to do that on my own.
Yeah, I've done that. Well, he's never. It's interestingly, my dad has never directed any of my stuff, which
Right.
is, a little weird because one would think that would have happened. But it's as it turns out, like all of my bands and stuff have been. He lives in California, and I've lived on the East Coast, and so it
Hmm.
just is not conducive to us collaborating or working together on something. Although I would still love to do that. That would be really fun.
Yeah, no, that would be superb. I mean, how do you think growing up, just with those experiences affected you, in your career and, as a musician?
Well, it's affected everything.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, so everything from I mentioned before that I don't drink, and part of that I think was affected by being around a lot of partying, and I actually
Hmm.
like turned the other way and was like, that's not for me. And I remember speaking of Twisted Sister, I was with Dee Snider, and I was 13 or something, and he had an influence. He said, you have a choice. You don't have to do that stuff. He's like, you're going to encounter pot and alcohol. And he said, listen, you don't feel forced. You really don't have to do it. He's like, I don't do it. And that was interesting, to hear from a rock star or,
Yeah.
soon to become a rock star, to give that kind of input to a kid. And that had an impact in addition to all the other stuff I was seeing where I was like, I don't know that that's the life I want to lead. So, but also, being in Twisted Sister video it was We're Not Gonna Take It. And I was the kid who said, I want to rock.
It's
And I
like
was famous.
the video.
I was famous. I was
Yeah.
famous for about 6 months. I
That's
literally would
awesome.
walk down the street and people would recognize me. And that was, there was something very appealing about that, as one
Sure.
would expect. And I remember, like, I changed schools the summer that video came out. So I went to school. I was living my parents had split up. I was living on the West Coast with my dad, going to school, and I was going to the school where they just totally rejected me, and I was completely outcast in seventh grade. And then
Wow.
that summer, the video came out, but I also changed schools at the same time. So I came into a new school, totally fresh slate, really. I moved back to the East Coast to live with my mom. And this is, predates social media, but I will say within the first 20 minutes, the whole school knew that I was there,
That's
because word of mouth, man, just passed around. And all of a
hmm
sudden, I was the most popular kid in school, maybe for like a week, because I was on TV, and that was
yeah.
pretty sexy to everybody. But I'll tell you one thing, like, I think I had the self-confidence to realize, or the self-knowledge to know that being a loser was totally not who I was. That was bullshit. And being famous was also totally bullshit.
Right.
Like, neither was a reflection of who I was as a person. So it did put it into perspective. It wasn't like I thought, yeah, I deserve this. I am the best. I deserve all the attention I'm getting. I was like, this is no more real than getting rejected was.
True.
And so I did have that perspective, and I think that also helped. But I will say that, I wanted to be a rock star, and still kind of do. I love it. I love performing. I like being on stage. Where my father is behind the camera, I always wanted to be in front of it.
Well, it's so, amazing, man, because I mean, going back to those days, just, seeing videos like We're Not Gonna Take It. I mean, being the kid that you basically, inspired me, man. I've always wanted to be a rock star. It's only been recently since I'm like, well, maybe not the star part. I just want to rock.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, that's actually become where I'm at now, which is the fame part I just don't care about
Yeah.
anymore. I literally do not care. I love to play music, and I do like an audience, because it's really fun to play music to an audience and to play off of that audience. So you want to have enough of a following to get that feedback because that feels really good and you're vibing together rather than just rocking out to like a dead, empty club. You still do it because you love to play, but it's so much better to get that energy back. And so if I can just be famous enough to play in front of an audience, that's good for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's good for me. I don't have to be on TV. I really don't. I just don't care about that stuff.
YouTube's where it's at anyway nowadays.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's easy to be on YouTube, but I don't have to have a million hits on YouTube. I just don't care. You know,
Yeah.
if I can get, if I can play to a live audience, I'm feeling good.
I know, absolutely. And that's one of the things that actually drives me crazy is with these hits, likes, follows, subscriptions. And there's definitely people out there that know how to manipulate the system. But I think that people judge you according to that before they even listen to the music. And I think that's ridiculous how it is nowadays.
Well, it's even more ridiculous. And I work in marketing. That's my day job. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that a lot of that stuff is faked.
Sure.
You just said it. It's manipulated. And so you can pay to have likes. You can pay to have followers. And so it is totally fake. But you're right. People are still influenced by that. Just they think that you're something you're not. And it's impossible to tell the difference, or it's difficult to tell the difference between somebody who really organically has built an audience and versus someone who just paid and it's like, there it is. And that doesn't mean those people, and if you pay for it, those people are not showing up for your shows. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
But
No
if
kidding.
you organically build it, they will. So there is benefit to like working and building a fan base. It's just like going out on tour used to be, where you used to one by one, like go to clubs across the country, and you just, slowly build this fan base and build a list. We used to all have lists and mailing lists.
Yep.
So it's not that different. It's just you can do it digitally. And I think if you're willing to invest the time and you have the type of personality to like talk to people and interact and engage and put yourself out there, then I think that is then good. You deserve it. You've put the work in. As long as as long as your music, I think, as long as your product is good, then I have no problem with it at all.
I think that was an excellent point there. Hey man, time flies. I really enjoyed talking to you here. And before we go, we're definitely going to play your new single here. It's called Waves. And wanted you to maybe tell us a little bit about this, kind of be the DJ and intro it.
All right. So this next song is Waves. And this song is inspired by the finding recently, I think it was last year, about gravitational waves. And it just was inspiring to think about this new phenomenon of these waves generated through space and time and how you could sort of latch onto that. And so that inspired the lyrics. And then the music has a real, like, I guess it's sort of a mix of 80s and current feel. It's sort of like it's like a classic space song. You know how there are these songs about space throughout our rock and roll history? It's right in line with those, and that was totally intentional.
We're back and forth.